As we sit here and exit Thanksgiving weekend, we've got yet another thing to be thankful for. The Duke Blue Devils are back in the win column. They pick up a win over Seattle and now get set for a very tough test in the ACC SEC Challenge.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome on into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. So excited to have you here with us to start a new week and a new month here on Locked On Blue Devils. It's Monday, December 2nd, 2024. Locked On Blue Devils is your one-stop shop where we discuss everything going on in the life of Duke athletics. On today's show, we're going to dive deep into the win over Seattle for Duke basketball as they're now 5-2 on the season. And our good friend Ben McCormick of Duke Wisdom is here on the show to break it all down with us, look ahead to the Auburn game coming up on Wednesday this week, and so much more. Duke football with a really exciting walk-off touchdown victory over Wake Forest this past weekend. Duke women's soccer knocks off Virginia Tech 1-0 in the NCAA quarterfinals. They're heading to just their fifth College Cup, the Final Four, for the fifth time ever in Duke soccer history. So a really exciting weekend, a lot for us to kind of dive into, and we'll certainly focus on this basketball game as Duke takes down Seattle and now has a big test ahead of them. If you have not done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free wherever it is that you get your podcasts. Be sure to leave us a 5-star rating and written review, particularly on the Apple Podcast platform. The algorithms love those written reviews. I do as well. You can get a 5-star Friday shout out if you leave us one of those reviews, and we really do appreciate all of your support. You can watch the show each and every day on YouTube as well. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, like these videos, share it with your friends, and so much more. Follow us on X at LO_Blue Devils, and I'm there as well at _JJ_Jackson_. Again, a 22-point victory for Duke over Seattle. Really impressive to get them back into the win column. And I tell you what, the defense continues to show out time in and time out. That's been really impressive to watch. They're back to the number 2 defensive efficiency team in the entire country. Auburn's one of the best offenses in the entire country, if not the best, when you look at the numbers inside KenPom. So we're due for a really big test coming up on Wednesday. But joining us on the show today, our good friend, the aforementioned Ben McCormick's here with us. And man, we've had a couple of really tough losses, 2 losses by a combined 8 points so far to start the young season. But it's always good to get back in the win column, and I was happy to see this team back on the floor Friday night and picking up that win, Ben.
Yeah, I think it's nice that they get sort of a buffer game in between those tough ranked matchups. It wasn't a perfect game by any means, and I'm sure we'll get into a little bit of that, but it's nice to just get a comfortable win at the very least before you have to go into what I would say might be very well the toughest game of the season for Duke.
Yeah, it paid off when you look at the Kentucky loss, you play Wofford, then you go to Arizona. No time at all because then you stay out west, and from Arizona you go directly kind of into that Kansas game. And now they've had the Seattle game before they get ready for Auburn, and this team's still trying to figure so much out before they get into ACC play, because that's going to be a test after test every single time. It's going to be really interesting to see how this team turns it around. But really impressed to see Duke offensively play as well as they did in this Seattle game and really lock it in defensively as they've continued to show throughout the course of the entire season. This defense, man, it's hard to score on this Duke team. And the best part is even in a game like this against Seattle, who's really struggling to knock down shots, Ben, it didn't matter who was on the floor. Like Duke was subbing in a lot of players, and it never tailed off.
Yeah, I mean, just 10 shots made for Seattle on the game. And, I mean, they go to the free throw a little more than you would like. But like you said, subbing in, I mean, they were a true 10 guys deep for that game. I mean, Isaiah Evans was playing more minutes than Gillis, than certain guys off the bench. I think maybe the same as Malik Brown or somewhere in the ballpark. And so this was a true 10-man rotation that I think a lot of fans have been clamoring for, right? They've been wanting to see this in bigger games. And so you get a little bit of a test run. You see what they're about in this game. And I think they all handled business defensively. I mean, it was like you said, they were just an absolute juggernaut on the defensive end of the ball. The offense, it had its moments, it had its shortcomings, but I think that's kind of been the story all season long, really.
Yeah, to think about that again, 10 shots made by Seattle in this game. They score 48 total points. There was the shot clock error record defensively that Duke had against Wofford, their game in between Kentucky and Arizona. And Wofford was able to walk away knocking down 14 shots, so 4 more than the Redhawks were even able to. The switchability that Duke has shown so far this season, the rim protection, it's all kind of been there. But time and time again, it feels like the length of the Duke basketball team is what makes it so special and makes it so elite. You feel like you've got an open shot, and then bam, 6'7", 6'6", 6'8", all these long arms coming out to contest your shot for Duke.
Yeah, I mean, positional size is a completely different animal than having just this traditional center and a traditional center that backs him up, especially when you're playing a team like Seattle, when you're playing a non-Power 5 school that traditionally doesn't have that kind of size. That's daunting. I mean, going against a 6'5" point guard, a 6'7" shooting guard, that's tough for a non-Power 5 school. I mean, even if you have a little bit of interior size, who cares? Because when you have a power forward that can guard a center, a small forward that can guard a point guard, it's really, really difficult for those teams to manage.
Pretty impressive win. As you said a moment ago, Isaiah Evans had the most run that he's had in quite some time and showed out. And we'll dive into the box score here in just a little bit. After the game, John Shire had some interesting comments for Duke fans. He was asked about kind of the flow of the offense, about the rotation this time of year, just kind of where this team is at 7 games into the season. And he had some really interesting quotes, Ben, where he's kind of alluding to not calling a whole lot of sets right now, letting this team kind of come together and figure it out sort of on the fly almost, which I think I could see kind of both sides of the argument there. But, hey, at least he spoke, right, in so many ways. I feel like you could have gotten a coach that would have given you cliches, not given you as much detail. But he pretty openly said, like, look, here's the deal. Here's what we're doing.
I'm glad that he did, right? Like, this is something that people have been talking about. They've been speculating about, like, what are the plays John's actually running? What's actually happening out there on the court? And, yeah, he went out and he said, I'm just letting them figure it out on the floor. And I think you hit it right on the nail. I can see both sides of this. There's one side of me that's like, I think this could really benefit these young players by March, and they're going to figure it out, and they're going to be able to go with anything that's thrown at them. The other half of me thinks, well, maybe if you would run some sets with how razor thin those 2 losses were, maybe Duke's still undefeated right now. But, I mean, what was the correct course of action? I guess time will tell.
Yeah, and it's always easy to correct the losses after they've happened, right? Kind of armchair quarterback, Monday morning quarterback, however you want to look at it. Hindsight's always 20/20, able to kind of look back and fix those things. So interesting to see if Duke's able to take the loss in the Kansas game or the Kentucky game and put it together in what's going to be a really big test against Auburn coming up on Wednesday night and as they go into the ACC season, because what we've seen so far, Duke continues to prove at the top they are certainly capable of winning it all. Really, really impressive basketball team. We've got more numbers offensively, though, to look at for this Duke team in particular following their win over Seattle, and we'll do that after we take our first break here on today's show. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of different tickets. It makes it so much easier on concert, comedy, theater events, and so much more. All in pricing where you could toggle this feature on to show the total up front, and you've got no surprise fees at checkout. I love the seat views as well, where you're able to get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. It's the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create that account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time, proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Okay, forward we go. We've got Ben McCormick here with us on the program today. We're talking about the Duke basketball game and their win against Seattle as the Blue Devils improved to 5-2 on the season as we take a look at some of the numbers for the Duke team in particular. Offensively, it was Tyrese Proctor again who's leading the way with 13 points, just 9 for Cooper Flagg. Con Knippel has 11, but really Proctor has been on a scoring tear as of late, and it's been the shot from the outside, Ben, that's kind of impressed me most with what he's been able to do.
Yeah, I mean, time after time, right, with Tyrese, I always say that he doesn't shoot enough. And even when he plays well, I still think he didn't shoot enough. I would like to see Tyrese be a guy that's putting up 15 shots in a game. I want to see that happen. I like seeing a double-digit number in this game. That's nice. I really think that if he puts up more shots, he's capable of being a guy that can give you 20. Because I think a problem they've had so far this season is Cooper can give you 20, Con can as well. Tyrese hasn't really put himself at that level yet, and I'm not so sure that anybody has put themselves at that level except for the two freshmen. And so that's been a bit of an issue. Tyrese is making steps in a positive direction, though, that he can be a guy that's leaned on in big moments.
3 of 10 from the floor, 3 of 9 from three-point range. After he got his three-point percentage back to 50%, he's going to fall back just a little bit here. But again, we like the aggressive nature from him. I think those shots from the outside are going to continue to be looks that he gets throughout the course of the season. And to your point, if he can continue to be aggressive, I think that's going to be awesome to see for Proctor himself, who knocked down all 4 of his free throw attempts as well. I guess my thing would be, how can you mix in a little bit of attacking the rim and those outside shots for Proctor? Looking at the numbers from last year, he very rarely, hard to say, took transition twos. And if he can kind of improve in that area, man, he's going to be so difficult to guard and predict what he might do offensively.
I think that he can take guys off the dribble pretty well. He's got a good offensive game at all 3 levels. He's got a good mid-range shot, very good footwork in the mid-range to get shots off. That's something, since he's been moved off ball, that's something that we haven't seen as much of. I think that he was able to create his own shot going downhill or in the mid-range a little more when he was bringing the ball up, when he had more options. Now it seems like every time he gets set up for a shot, that shot is a 3. He's kind of coming off these off-ball screens, and he's getting set up just for wing three-pointers, corner three-pointers, a lot of that kind of stuff, which isn't bad because clearly, like you said, he's proven that he can shoot it 50% on the season, or just a little bit lower. That's great, and I'll continue to take that. But I would like to see him and see John Shire find a way to set him up for some of those opportunities in the paint and in the mid-range.
Likewise, because I fully believe that he's able to take advantage of those opportunities. 4 assists for Proctor as well. Cooper Flagg, stuff in the stat sheet per usual. 9 points, 9 rebounds, 7 assists. Didn't do much defensively in the categories when you look at blocks and steals, but he was very difficult for Seattle to score on. As we said, they just made 10 shots total on a game like this. His ability to continue to do a little bit of everything, to continue to lead Duke offensively in so many categories. Con Knippel had tied him for the lead in assists on the year, and then he has this big runaway where he has 7 assists on the game, just 1 for Con Knippel, so he's got the outright lead there. I mean, all of these statistical categories, Cooper Flagg just continues to leave his mark.
Yeah, Cooper seems like he's going to be in a position that he'll be in the run for ACC player, rookie, and defensive player of the year. And that'll be something we have to monitor throughout the year. Obviously, it's really early, but he just does everything at such a high level. And I think that he does, and I've said this before, but I think he does what's needed to get wins. If he doesn't need to score 20, he just doesn't do it. And we saw that against Wofford. He had 8 points against Wofford, 9 points against Seattle. Those single-digit games, they happen in games where the game really wasn't in question. And so that's why I don't think it's ever really a problem when he does that. He has his big games in big moments. He perhaps didn't have as big a game as Duke would have liked against Kansas, but outside of that, he stepped up in big moments.
I love seeing the 11 points that Duke got out of Con Knippel, who had, in many regards, a relatively quiet game compared to what we're used to seeing from him. But 11 points, 4 of 5 from the floor, 3 of 4 from three-point range. Again, those games inside Cameron Indoor, he's been money. They're going to need him to knock down those shots against Auburn coming up. But, good to see Con get back after it. And it's interesting, the games where we see a whole lot of shots for Con versus games like this where he only attempts 5 from the floor.
Yeah. it's something's going to have to give on Wednesday against Auburn, right? It's going to be Con hasn't shot well in big games, but he shot really well in Cameron. So something's going to give. One of those two is going to stop. But I think that you're onto something, that we see a very low shot count from Con in this game and a little bit lower offensive usage from him and Cooper than normal. And I think that's honestly probably a good sign for this team. Not that they shouldn't be involved or that they shouldn't even be the two biggest, involvements in the offense. But I think if you want to put less of an emphasis on them carrying the complete offensive load moving forward. And I think you saw a start for that against Seattle.
Kamen Malawach finishes with 9 points. He's 4 of 5 from the floor, just 3 rebounds, not too many for him in that area there. But looking at what he's able to do offensively, I still would love to see him get the ball a little bit more on the inside and kind of be a big playmaker, look for his shot, throw lobs at the rim towards him. Want to focus on the Seattle game a little bit, but again, looking at that Auburn game in particular, the Tigers are led by Johni Broome, who is in the Naismith conversation for Best Player of the Year. He's one of the shot blockers in the NCAA over the last 3 seasons. Really good at blocking shots. And if there's any way at all to get an All-American type player like that in foul trouble, you would think it would be by factoring in Kamen Malawach a little bit on the offensive end of the floor. That will be the matchup that he's got, is Johni Broome for Auburn.
Yeah, I think that to get him in foul trouble, you've got to give the ball more to Malawach. You've got to go with a lot of Cooper flag plays, kind of get switches, get Cooper on with Broome. But I think I love what you're saying about Malawach. It has frustrated me to no end with some of these tall, lanky 5-star centers Duke's had over the last few years. At the beginning of their careers, they do not get used nearly enough offensively. They have impacts defensively like Derek Lively, Mark Williams did as freshmen, but it took them almost the entire season to really start getting those guys looks. And when you consider just how good of hands Malawach has, he catches most everything thrown his way. He has fantastic touch around the basket. You got to get him the ball more. Get it to him deeper, throw him lobs. I don't know why they don't throw him more lobs than they do. You would think that he would get it more. I turn back to that Kansas game when Dickinson gets ejected. He only gets 1 touch the rest of the game. That just seems almost criminal to do it like that. So I think that you're right. Against Auburn, if they're going to have some success in the interior and put pressure on Johni Broome, they've got to really utilize Malawach.
Hopefully that's the game plan. I think it's something that we likely could see for this Auburn team, this Duke team in this game coming up against Auburn. It's going to be really important. Let's talk a little bit more about that game on Wednesday, what to expect here when Locked On Blue Devils continues in just a moment on this Monday episode. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Make sure you get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything that you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get in a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. We've got a fun one tonight in Monday Night Football between the Cleveland Browns and the Denver Broncos. FanDuel right now has Denver favored by 6. So get in on the action over at FanDuel. You'll get started again with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL and a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Okay, we continue here. We're looking at this Auburn game coming up on Wednesday. The ACC-SEC Challenge. These two teams have not played since 2019, the Zion Williamson year. So really that would have been the fall of 2018. Duke and Auburn went head-to-head in Maui, but a game that's not used to be playing. It's going to be fun to see these two teams go head-to-head in the ACC-SEC Challenge. And man, oh man, what a year to be paired up with Auburn, because what Bruce Pearl's got there down on the Plains is one of the best teams in the entire country.
Yeah, I think right now it looks like the best team in the country. Now it's a young season. I think we talked about Malawach, and wouldn't it be nice to get a similar game out of him
Yeah,
that Duke got out of Marquise Bolden the last time they played?
sure.
Marquise Bolden, I think, had an 8-block game in Maui
You're
that
right.
last time.
Yes.
And so can we get a little bit of a breakout game from the 5-star center in this one? That would be very, very useful in this game. I definitely think so.
Without it, I mean, yeah, that'd be massive if we were able to get that type of performance from Malawach. Because again, Auburn features Janai Broome so much on the interior and what he's going to be able to do this season. The bench is going to be important in this one too. We saw Isaiah Evans get those 17 minutes of action, scoring 9 points against Seattle. We've seen good games as of late from Malik Brown and Sion James and Mason Gillis. What are you expecting from those guys, and how important are they to Duke's success if they want to pick up a win like this over Auburn?
Well, defensively, Malik Brown is absolutely vital to this game if they want to get a win. We've talked as much as we have about Malawach, but at the end of the day, he's still 18 years old. What if he doesn't show up in the moment? What if he gets in foul trouble, which is probably pretty likely given the fact that he'll be guarding Broome? Malik Brown coming in and being able to just get his hands on everything, make life difficult for Broome, just like he made life difficult for Dickinson. I'm of the belief that Janai Broome's a much better player than Hunter Dickinson, so it's going to be a tougher battle for him. But I think Malik Brown's up to that challenge. Does he need to score? I'd like to see him score a little bit. I don't want to see him put up a goose egg and just have a defensive game with 4 fouls. That would be helpful, but get some buckets off the bench, because Auburn's bench can put up points in a hurry. And so if Duke just goes out there, they get 6 or 8 out of Sion James, they get 0 out of Brown, 2 out of Gillis. I don't think that's enough. I just don't think that getting 8 or 9 bench points, that's not going to cut it, unless Cooper Flagg's putting up 30 and Con Knippel's putting up 20. It just seems very unlikely. And so I'd like to see at least a double-digit game from Sion James, a couple baskets from Brown and Gillis as well.
1981 is the only other time that Auburn has ever played at Cameron Indoor Stadium. It's only been played 4 times. This will be the 4th meeting between Duke and Auburn. Duke's won every single one of them. That last time that Auburn came to Cameron Indoor, Charles Barkley was a freshman standout for the Tigers. So really excited to see this game come and play together. The other X factor for me, Ben, when I look at this, I think we've got to be due at this point for a big-time Caleb Foster game. I think he's, as much as he might not personally be hearing this chatter that we're having out on the internet, but it's out there. He's got friends and family, I'm sure. And I feel like he's just due for a big-time game. He's a big-time player for this Duke team. And if they want to get to where they want to be at the end of the year, I think it has to include Foster making big-time plays. And it does. I don't feel like it's been overly bad with what he's been able to do. We just know he's not playing to his full potential so far this season.
Yeah, I hope he can have a bit of a breakout game. I think the biggest thing for Caleb is he's being relied upon as the primary point guard consistently. And yes, he played point guard some last year, but I don't think that full weight was put on his shoulders. And he struggled a little bit to initiate that offense. And I think because he's struggling to initiate that offense, his scoring game isn't getting into much of a flow. So I think the first step for him is be able to set up the offense successfully, get good looks for other guys, and then those looks will come to him. So what I'm really looking for from Caleb is I want to see a 5+ assist game from him. That's something we just really haven't seen.
Yeah.
Like you've mentioned earlier, Cooper and Con, they're the guys setting up the offense. And really, I think Caleb should be shouldering a little bit more of that, seeing as he is literally playing point guard. But if he can start getting other guys involved in it, I don't even think we need to see a 15-point game or something out of Caleb Foster. Just a more consistent and thorough game of being the true point guard would do.
I can't wait to see this game unfold. I mean, something's got to give. It's one of the best defenses in the entire country in Duke versus the best offense so far this season in Auburn. And hopefully it's Caleb Foster who's setting the tone offensively for this Duke team. Cooper Flagg's going to be a problem for every team that Duke goes up against this season. I would like to think, though, if you're Auburn, you're watching a whole lot of what Kansas was doing in the first half against Duke to kind of take him out of the game plans entirely and to limit what Flagg's able to do offensively. And then that's where someone like Knippel knocking down shots Proctor being consistent, Foster stepping up is going to be key because I'd like to think that Auburn saw something out of what Kansas was doing against Cooper Flag.
Well, John said that he was just putting them out there and making them, figure it out for themselves.
Sure.
I do want to see what his response is because I know that it's not 100%. We're just playing pickup basketball out there. So I want to see what is John Shire's response to Kansas's game plan against Cooper Flag because they made it quite clear. Put a hard double team on Cooper Flag, and he's going to give the ball away.
Yeah.
He did it almost every single time against Kansas, and he did it a lot against Kentucky. I want to know that the projected number 1 pick, that we have a way to deal with that because that can't just be a 1-for-1. You double team him, he's out of the game now because that sucks. Like there needs to be some sort of game plan put forward. And I think combat that. And if they can turn the page on, Con Knipple has just been a terribly inefficient 3-point shooter and Duke's losses so far, 1 of 16 in those 2 games from 3 combined. He doesn't even have to shoot that well. I mean, if he shoots 30% from 3, they're probably in a position to win. And so I want to see, can they deal with those double teams to Cooper Flag, and can Con get out of that shooting slump?
We'll see it unfold on Wednesday night, a big one. It's a late one again, 9:15 Eastern time on ESPN is when this game is kind of scheduled to tip off. Ben, I know that you've got a lot of great content over there in the Duke Wisdom world. How can people best support you? Where can they find all your work?
Yeah, go to dukewisdom.org to find articles, the podcast, pictures, whatever. On the website, you can just look up the Duke Wisdom podcast on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, YouTube, wherever you're listening, and you can hear me and Clinton Weaver cut it up about Duke, much like we do on here.
That's terrific. We'll do this again sometime soon, okay?
Yeah, thank you, JJ.
All right, that's Ben McCormick joining us here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils, and that's going to do it for our show here today. Really enjoyed that conversation, breaking down the Seattle win for the Blue Devils on the basketball floor and looking ahead to that game coming up against Auburn. It's a 2-for day. It's a double day. Later this afternoon, we'll have another episode of Locked On Blue Devils where we dive deep into the win over Wake Forest. What a win it was for Duke football to close out the regular season with a 9-3 record. That'll do it for our show. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.